We'll be putting together, of course, a new budget next year. Do you think that if you don't get this information now, do you think that this will still have to be released during the hearings on putting together a new budget?
Well, I think the budget committee is going to have to ask the right questions when they do hearings of those departments who will be asked to come and present their budgets. But this information isn't a usual part of the budget negotiations during the session. But I do want to make this point. I've been here a few years, and I have been. I represented the Senate Democrats on the Budget Committee for many years, many of those years, and actually was an actor on the budget negotiations for many years. I have never, ever, in my time here, seen a budget agency as unable or unwilling to provide assistance and information to the legislative branch. I've been through many budget directors and a few governors, and I have never seen such unwillingness to participate. There were times during the last budget session when only legislators and their fiscal staff were in the room and the budget agency was not there. I've never, ever seen a time when the budget agency did not participate in those negotiations. Because they're the ones that keep the day-to-day records. You know, the whole process is kind of a strange one on the budget, but you go through each line item in the budget bill, and you kind of argue amongst yourselves, and everybody offers information. But in the end, you have these big spreadsheets, and you say, okay, this program gets cut this much, and this program gets this much money, and we all agree to it, and you kind of sign off on that, and then you go to the next thing. The budget agency was never in the room, and that has never happened. We often called over there, and if you call after 5 o'clock, there was no one there. They went home. While the rest of us were here trying to work out a budget. And I've never heard of such a thing.
So do you think the governor's office has too much power with respect to the legislative branch, or do you think it's more this governor has been, using that power? Well,
I think it's a combination of things. We for many, many years, as long as I remember, we have put into the budget provision to allow the governor to balance the budget depending on the revenue stream as it came in. And we have felt that was an important thing to do since we're a part-time legislature. We go home during the summer, and as the revenue stream comes in, the adjustments to the appropriations can be made by the governor, and we want the governor to have that authority. But there's nothing in that language in the budget bill, at least there hasn't been in the past, any provision to require the governor to tell us what he was doing in that decision making. And in the past, governors have had to make cuts. Governor Bayh had to make cuts. Governor O'Bannon had to make cuts. Governor Orr had to make cuts. We've had that information provided to us if we asked for it. This is the first time that these abuses have taken place, to my knowledge. And this is not a partisan issue, because I think if you ask Republican members of the budget negotiations, they will tell you, if they're being totally open and honest about it, they will tell you exactly the same thing. They were very frustrated during the last session because of the lack of information. And I've had other members of leadership from the other caucuses tell me to keep going for this information. We really need it.
Is that what you would prefer, just the information coming from the governor about what he's cutting, or should the legislature take that authority back to make the cuts themselves rather than leave it in the hands of the governor?
I think it has to be. I think it has to be both. I don't want to take the power back. The authority we have to, because of the part-time legislature, we have to have a governor's office that is empowered to make cuts when it's necessary. You have to balance the checkbook every month, basically, to make sure that we've got cash, right? But I do think that it's unfortunate, but I think it's going to be necessary to limit that authority so that the information that we need is given to us on a regular basis. I mean, it's a terrible thing when your constituents have to get your information from your own constituents about what budget cuts are being made, and then they call and sometimes cry and sometimes are exasperated about what do we do now, and we have no answer for them because we didn't even know it was going to happen. So better communication between the executive branch and the legislative branch is really important. And I used to have my complaints about the communication between the Governor Bai's office and the legislature. We used to complain about that too. But so it isn't partisan, but we never were completely cut out of the loop in terms of information. So the answer to your question is we have to do both. The legislature has to have some oversight. We have to have access to that information just as the public does in order to do our jobs. But we've never had this much trouble getting it before.
So is this a simple fix when the next budget comes around to write a clause into that rescission clause saying the governor shall report every month, 6 months?
I think that is a fix. I think monthly reports on potential reversions, on allocation reductions, on what you would call budget cuts, program cuts, those kinds of things should be a regular situation. Could just happen, maybe through the budget committee, but those reports are not taking place.
Would you look for that to be a part of the legislation that you said that the other 32 states have gone on?
I think there'll be a package because the language that we're talking about now is actually part of the budget bill. It isn't a separate bill. It's language giving the governor that authority, and I think that language can be tweaked to have some reporting requirement. But in addition to that, we'd like to see some transparency legislation that would include an online checkbook is what some states call it, and I think that information would be very good. Public information about contractors with the state of Indiana, so that if somebody wants to look it up, they can at least see who is giving campaign contributions and who is contracting with the state, and how much some of those contracts are for, because I think people would be very surprised and shocked to know. So all of that should be fair game for the public.